My name's Christian Barker. I'm an entertainment attorney here in Nashville. I focus primarily on the music industry. I also do some fine arts work and digital media, and that is transactional and litigation. I went to law school at Stetson University College of Law in St. Petersburg, Florida. Prior to that, did two master's degrees, and my undergrad is in English. My master's are in environmental policy, which obviously is not very conducive to what I'm doing now, but I also have an MBA, which I do find to come in handy. And then I've been in Nashville for about 6 or 7 years doing what I'm doing now. I do transactional and litigation works, and I work with, in the music industry, artists, producers, songwriters, and then some organizational clients. I have a trade organization that I work with that's focused on pop music in Nashville, and then several other kind of management companies, publishing companies, things like that. But for the most part, I guess place myself on the creative end of the spectrum for entertainment attorneys. I think on one side you have uber creative brained attorneys, and then on the other side is more business focused entertainment attorneys that are interested in leveraging catalogs and royalty recovery and things like that. For me, I'm very interested in working with artists, songwriters, producers from a very early stage in their career and helping assist them grow through deal seeking, and that inevitably lends itself to like contract negotiation, deal seeking, just deal making, helping them manage their catalogs, making sure all the split sheets are correct, things like that. So when I meet with new clients, my new client onboarding process is very organic, I would say, in nature, and so a few things that I look for in taking a new client on, from at an early point in your career, if you decide to do entertainment law or anything like that, you kind of have to take on the clients that walk in the door, regardless of what the vibe is. But at this point in my career, I certainly place value on hard work, positivity, just energy in general. And so even as a low level standard for clients that I'll take on, those are some things that I look for. They have to be what I call a good hang, which is just generally good people. I like to work with good people that are positive, and that in and of itself kind of lends itself to success, in my opinion, or potential success. And so using that as a baseline, kind of the advice that I give off the bat are you have to be a hustler. You can be a hustler and not very talented and still have a better career than someone who's talented but is lazy. And so when you find people that are talented and have like an instinctual hustle about them, those are the people that really come off the charts and blow up quick, in my opinion. Well, from a baseline practical standpoint, until a songwriter, for the purposes of composition, until a songwriter is signed to a publishing company, if that's something they seek to do, they need to create their own publishing company in order to capture all of the royalties through the PRO that they can, because the PROs, the performance rights organizations like BMI, ASCAP, CSEC, they pay out the royalties to the songwriter for the songwriter share, and then the publisher for the publisher's share. But if you don't have a publisher, you have to create a publishing company to capture those royalties paid to the publisher share. So from a practical standpoint, it's technically a publishing company. Now, do you hold yourself out as a publishing company? Do you actually pitch your own stuff, or admin your works. I mean, that's really it really depends on how much action you have going on with your catalog. But from a practical standpoint, you have to create a publisher for yourself to capture all of the royalties through the PRO. That being said, there are some writers that sign publishing deals from an early on standpoint just because they have the right connection, or maybe their catalog's generated interest. And really, there's no one size fits all recommendation in my book. What I try to do with my clients is sit down. I like to hear what their goals are, and then we kind of reverse engineer from what their 5-10 year goals are, reverse engineer back to today, and then I advise them on what I would have them do to take the initial steps toward those long-term goals. Sometimes that includes, working with a publisher, like a brick and mortar publisher here in Nashville, or maybe a TV film publisher either here, LA, or somewhere else, or maybe doing other single song deals or things like that. It just really widely varies depending on the client and what their goals are. So I think it's crucial for entertainment attorneys to know the ins and outs of the business in order to work in it. And there are a lot of different resources for entertainment attorneys to gain knowledge even prior to practicing throughout the educational process. I mean, Don Passman has a really great book. I think it's just called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Industry. And that's kind of the gold standard for the music industry. Entertainment is kind of a broad spectrum. We have TV, film, some people slide sports into that, and each little segment kind of has its own like nuances. For me in the music industry, there were a lot of things that I was able to learn up front, but essentially you have to be a continual student of the craft, because in music things shift, and I know in the other entertainment kind of lanes things shift rapidly. And so even though I've been practicing 6 years now, in the last, and even in that time, the landscape from 6 years ago to today is completely different. So even if I was the most abreast on every single thing when I started practicing, had I checked out and relied on that, I would be out of date at this point. So it's just a continual evolution, and to be successful, you just have to love the practice and be an ongoing, continual learner. There are two types of copyright or copyrights in music. The first is the sound recording copyright, which is tied to the actual recording. The second type of copyright is the composition copyright, and that's tied to the composition that was written. So usually things start out as a composition, and the composition is just the lyric and the lyrical melody, and then the musical components of the song. And then you have the sound recording, which is when an artist actually goes into recording studio or home studio and records the song, both instrumentation for the music and then the lyric melody. That's commonly referred to as the master. The master is the same thing as the sound recording, and the ownership of the master is the ownership of the sound recording copyright. Songwriter lawsuits and just entertainment suits in general, there are your infringement related actions with regard to the entertainment music industry, but more often than not, it's business disputes. I would classify them more as business disputes, not necessarily relating to copyright infringement, but relating to specific contractual obligations between parties, whether it's between a manager and an artist, or a songwriter and a publisher, or any contractual relationship that can be formed in the ongoing business practices in the music industry, I think that the most frequent litigation that I see is just business disputes related to contractual obligations that are not being performed correctly or are alleged to not be performed correctly. The Music Modernization Act is going to be most beneficial for songwriters. One of my dear mentors, Dina LaPolt, is one of the 4 or 5 music industry folks that have been the champions of this act all along, and it's going to standardize and regulate a lot of the royalty streams, and it's going to also encompass a board of songwriters that kind of make the collective decisions about administration of royalties, and it's going to be a phenomenal thing should it pass. I think the top mistake that young entertainment attorneys make is really assuming that you're going to be an overnight success, or coming in and thinking that you're going to get lateral transfer or transfer attorneys. It's very hard once an artist, songwriter, or producer is working with an attorney. It's very hard to get a transfer over from, if they're already working with someone. Whereas I would say other areas of legal practice, people are more apt to, kind of bop around between attorneys when they have business issues or whatnot, and rate shop or things like that. The relationship you build with an entertainment attorney is pretty deep, and usually an entertainment attorney is one of the first people that you work with if you're an upcoming artist, producer, songwriter. So the relationships and bonds that are built are very strong. So that being said, from an early standpoint, you really have to work toward developing relationships with people that are also entering the business from an artist standpoint, a songwriter standpoint, and things like that, and just develop long-term relationships. Even some of the clients that I met even before, or were friends that I met before I started practicing maybe 7 years ago, and we all kind of like growing up together in a high school class or something like that. We're all kind of work together and try to benefit each other's careers. And so now, 6-7 years later, we've gotten to enjoy the successes together. And so I have my crew that's been with me a long time. And just, I would say, out of the 6 years I've been practicing, just in the last 18 months to 2 years have I started to now see some of the lateral transfers over from other attorneys, or attract attention of kind of what I would consider a mid or upper tier level client. But it's taken just 60 to 80 hour work weeks, like, nonstop for the last 6 years to get to that place where you kind of gain a reputation and you're doing good things, and you kind of solidify a brand for yourself. Because I'm still trying to figure it out 6 years into this, but it's all about, again, back to what I said earlier, just if you exhibit positivity and you are a good hang and you have good vibes and you are positive and ethical toward your clients and you work really hard to see them succeed, then everything else kind of falls into place. One of the things that is the most complicating, I guess, in the growing nature of the music industry are the regional business practices. Nashville, from a publishing standpoint and just in general, operates completely different than Los Angeles, and they both operate very different than New York as far as regional business customs. There aren't any laws on the books that regulate what the appropriate splits are in a composition when you have co-writers or things like that. But as the industry changes, you see a lot more intermingling of these writers. A lot of pop writers are coming to Nashville. A lot of European writers are coming to New York, and vice versa. We have a lot of European electronic dance writers that live here in Nashville and then tour in Europe. And so I think that the thing that I would change, if I could change anything about the music industry, was just more of an open mind when it comes to getting the end result that everyone desires from a contractual standpoint with regard to splits or any other area that there are regional business practices that differ. Just knowing that this is that globalization in itself is hitting the music industry at a rapid pace as well, and so just having that realization and being able to work toward pragmatic solutions toward the blending of regional customs. For an artist, again, it's really different depending on the genre, but specifically in the country music, most artists now usually break through being a songwriter. Rarely do you see an artist rise up in the country genre at this point, unless they come off of a reality show or something like that that isn't already an established songwriter. Most of the people that have when they have their first hit, they will have already had 2 or 3 hits as songwriters with other artists performing them. And so really honing in on your craft as a songwriter if you're a country artist. If you're a pop artist, you really have a lot of lanes you can choose, especially, and also like a lot of other genres, Americana, folk, indie rock. I see artists more frequently break if they just want to be a recording artist and that's it in those other genres, but especially in the country genre, the songwriting craft is the core of an artist's success. I'm kind of a wild card, but I do have on my bucket list to get a Tupac tattoo one day. I'm hardcore. A lot of people kind of have the Beatles, or they have their Bruce Springsteen or whoever. And for me, I think that the time period where you start to really listen to music and interact with music, I think that's around like between it's middle school age, and for me, there was nothing bigger in my middle school, like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, than Tupac. And just, I don't think that, I still don't think, even though he's a legend gone too soon, I still don't think people appreciate just the quality, lyrical, melodic, and just general overall artistry that was in his craft. I think it's very still underappreciated, and I'm a huge Tupac fan, surprisingly enough.